Welcome to the Blessed Podcast. I'm your host, Raquel. This podcast is to help you experience being blessed that transcends a mere hashtag. Now, let me add my disclaimer. I'm not an evangelist, preacher, prophet, or Bible scholar. I'm a God-worshiping, Jesus-loving, Bible-believing, New Thought Christian who believes that God blesses us according to our faith and how we work his principles. So, if you're ready to be encouraged and grow your faith by hearing how God is blessing his children, then you're in the right place. I'm broadcasting on WYTV7 Christian Broadcasters Network, a nonprofit charitable radio broadcast with the mission to empower, encourage, and educate. Donations are always welcome to help further the mission. You can donate at www.wytv7.org. Today's sponsor is Tolson's Publishing. We publish books to make you think about what you think about. Get your copy of Undefiled or Why Church Folk Are Poor today at Amazon.com or at www.raqueltolson.com. Today's guest is another millennial, Roderick Talley.
Yeah.
He's an entrepreneur, a published author who is using his gifts in creative writing and spoken word. He has books, poetry books, and he's also publishing, right? And he started a new venture reviewing other people's books.
Yeah.
So help me welcome Roderick. Or is that R.D. Talley Books?
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for, you know what? Okay, so I always tell people like, well, I don't know the person. So Roderick and I were at a women's conference, right? It was like a one-day women's conference.
Right.
And we were right next to each other selling our books well, you know. Because we didn't get to say, they didn't give us an opportunity to sell a lot of books, but we enjoyed ourselves and we sold the books to the people who needed to have them.
Yeah.
Right. And
true.
we made the connections.
We did it.
And we made the connections. And you got my book and I got your book.
Yeah.
And we made this connection. So regardless, it was a good time. It was a good time.
It was. And then I met your son too. He's a pretty awesome guy.
Thank you. Awesome oh, thank you so much. You know, as a mother, I love to hear that because I always say it's about me. That means I did a good job.
Of course. I know it takes a lot to raise young men, especially young black men, and see that how far he's come and see the good things he was doing. I think he had just graduated at the time, or he was about to graduate
with his master's degree.
Yeah, that is amazing. I still ain't got my master's degree, so it's always great to see other fellow African American males actually doing positive things. So, and
that's what November is about for me. It's about highlighting some millennial, because I'm a Gen Xer with a millennial, and I think a lot of the other people in the audience are Gen Xers. And they have millennial children. And it's just, like I always say, it's good to know that God is blessing people and to see young black men doing their thing.
Yes.
That's not something that you always see on the news. Exactly. Unless you're playing basketball.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I'm saying? Because even the singers and stuff, our singers, they only highlight the ones that's doing bad.
Yeah. It's usually the negative stuff, but there's so many great people doing great things, and I think, to be honest, we outnumber the people that's doing negative stuff.
You're right, and this is a time. Somebody told me that this is a time for millennials. Well, it's a great time in America for a lot of people to go out there and make get businesses and go out there. It's not necessarily hustle, because I really hate that hustle and grind type term, but if you get a plan, you work your dream, and it's a good time. So it's a good time for millennials really to be out there exercising their faith.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so I'm excited for you. Okay, so I have let's start with your book. Okay, so we gonna get into it.
Let's get into it.
Because I trust you, and I think you trust me. So the title of your book is Sinner Turned Role Model Turned Advocate.
That's right.
You read my book, and you know I have a thing about people calling themselves a sinner.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
In your words, explain to me what you meant in your title, Sinner Turned Role Model Turned Advocate.
So what I meant primarily is about the mindset. So I went from somebody who was looking to be sinful or someone who was looking to get into trouble. Then I realized, you know, there's a lot of people looking up to me. Like I had a lot of siblings, a lot of cousins, relatives, friends, people that I barely knew who I found out were looking up to me. And so I wanted to be like, you know, what kind of role model do I want to be for these people? Do I want to be a positive one or do I want to be a negative one? Because I see that some of them are going to follow my footsteps, whichever path I take. So that's where the role model comes in. And then the advocate comes in as I'm just an advocate for Christ. He's done way too much for me to not at least try to share his love to people, at least try to spread encouragement and share his good news. So that's mainly the title. That's where the title comes from.
Okay, I like that because you said it's a mindset.
Yes.
Let's talk about that because it wasn't what you were doing. Because most people, you think sinner, you think, oh, this person is doing bad stuff, even though you said you were, but you said it was the mindset.
Right.
And that's what we focus so much on what you doing. We don't focus on why you doing it.
Right.
But mindset you have, you know, somebody that's out there stealing. Okay, so we want to just focus on the theft and then what they stealing and, you know, what's happening. But let's focus on their mindset that there's lack and that the only way they can get is to steal. That's what we need to talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
Their mindsets, you know, instead of focusing on, oh, we got to get them because they're stealing. Right. Now, don't get me wrong. I do believe that, you know, there's consequences for behavior. So it may be that you do have to go to jail for a while or you have to go through some diversion program or whatever. But it's the mindset of lack that causes thieves.
That's correct.
And so I'm so glad to hear you say, when you say sinner turn, you're not thinking that because you know how people say, we were all born in sin, we are sinners, saved by God, we just sinners. And I'm like, ooh, stop. We just children of God. Point blank, period.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that when you talk about sinner, you said it's the mindset. And so I'm sure, because you said you get this question, so I'm sure you're out there explaining to people. Because don't want, because to bring people to Christ, we can't be condemning them.
No, it's only by love. It's only by love. That's the only way we can. When we express love and we share the love that God has shared on us, when we realize how much God loves us, the only way we can really convert people is if we show it by loving on people. I mean, that's pretty much the only way we can do it. I've tried the forceful way. I've seen people try to be, I've been in their shoes where people try to force it on me, and I was looking at them like they're crazy. But when people loved on me and were praying for me and they were supporting me, they may not have agreed with all of my methods, and they were like, you know, things like that. But they were like, you know what? God bless you. You know, God, I love you anyway. You know, I mean, God's working on you. And it was those kind of things that were encouraging me that planted seeds. And it was like, you know what? I really am worth something. You know, I'm worth more than what I might be labeled as, especially when other people were labeling me as something else, you know.
So tell me this. It's like an echo.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I heard an echo a little bit. But as a millennial, what do you think is keeping them out the church?
Ooh, I believe it could be a few things. It could be because something that I've experienced when I've returned to church, or I've been out of church for a while and I've returned to church, is that, or things that I've seen in church myself, is how judgmental the church can be. That could be one. So a lot of people might look at millennials like, oh, your hairstyle or the way you dress is different from the way I used to dress. And or the way you talk or the way you carry yourself is a little different. So people would judge them. And that's exactly how we're not supposed to be. We're not supposed to be judgmental. Another thing I noticed is that millennials tend to do things, the non-traditional route. Things are a lot different from 20 years ago. 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of things that we do have today. Like, for instance, when I was a kid, my video games was Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo, things like that. But now these game systems have internet connection where you can actually communicate with people from around the world. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of people might say, oh, that's not the traditional way of doing things. Well, to some people, that's the only way that they can find common ground with people. You can find common ground on the video games if you find people that like the same game you have, mm-hmm. or the same games you have, or they play the similar style that you have. And usually you can connect and be like, hey, I like the way you play. Do you do this often? Blah, blah, blah. And that's usually like an introduction to meeting new people, mm-hmm. even though it's not face-to-face, but online. But that's shunned out. That's, frowned upon by a lot of people that might not choose to be connected with the youth or choose to be connected with millennials. So I think that, different settings, different changes, mm-hmm. I think just... I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, so it's funny because my nephew was on, and because I guess you guys are like that top of the millennial, or some people call it zennials, and right. So you were the last babies the first babies basically that was introduced to that whole internet type world,
right?
As children. It's interesting to me how kids can stay in their rooms like forever and not really come out and do stuff. But then, like, even when I go to, say, a restaurant, I see parents with their young kids and all of them have iPads in front of them. They're not talking at the table, at the dinner table. They're sitting there, but they're not talking because the kids, they give the kids the iPad and the kids are on the iPad. At young ages, just like parents have gotten to the point where it's okay just for them to have screen time and not, people time or conversation time. It's really interesting to me that's kind of where we're going. But I think as far as the church being judgmental, because I struggle with that. Right. Even if there's not. So
me too.
If it's not somebody actually telling you that you are a problem or it's just hearing them say stuff. Like, so I'm a product of the other woman. My mother was my daddy's other woman.
Okay.
And so when you were in church, when I was in church, I used to always hear, well, that's a sin. Adultery is a sin. And God hates the sin and all that stuff. And so as the product of that sin, I'm thinking that, I really felt like I was sin. Right. So I have this love-hate relationship because I love the church. Everything about God and church I was all for it. It just felt good to me. But then I had that cloud kind of over my head because they focused a lot on sin.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing where, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no.
That's the thing that I've seen happen a lot in churches where they're taught something like they're right. God doesn't love the sin, but he does love the person. Mm-hmm. And what the church might not do is might not explain the whole bad story of it. There's a whole story to sin, it's not just, you tend to focus on just the negative parts of it, but they don't explain the whole thing of it, the positive side of things.
And the positive side is that we grow.
Exactly.
Just like you did. Exactly. You said sinner turn role model, turn advocate, because it's out of some of the stuff that we may not do may not be right. But it usually, there's a way to grow because it says all things work together for the good of those who love the Lord. That does not exclude the sin that we do. It says all things, and I think that's what people got to realize. It's like, so if I did this, because now what happens is just like, well, let's just say the disciples, all of them had issues, They were better. They were better able to minister to people because they had issues.
Exactly.
A lot of the people, because of the fact if you were somebody that, you dealt with something and you got delivered or you got past it, you got a different mindset and you changed your thoughts about something, but you're able to connect with the people who are still in that, who haven't changed their mindset yet. They're willing to listen to you more so than somebody who hasn't experienced what they've experienced.
Exactly.
And so that's why when we look at, we have to be really careful how we present God to people. And like you said, it's really about love. If we just will focus on love, not even trying to change people, just offering them love, acceptance, and being a role model. Because sometimes your best sermon is how you live, not what you're talking about.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
So that's why I like when you said term role model, because that's what I thought. It was like I didn't hear in there that you were preaching to people. I heard that you were actually living your life, and that's why I chose you, because to come and speak to us, because you are so blessed in that you have poems in you and you put them out there and you published it, and I see you go out that's how I met you, but you go out and you share what you're doing, and you're blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think another thing is just once we get to the point where we understand that God, we might have a rough past, or we might not have came into the world under the best circumstances, but God planned that. And God doesn't want us to shun that out. He wants us to use that, So he wants us to use those past experiences. The fact that you came, like say you weren't even supposed to be here, or you came from an unfortunate situation, but he wants to use that to show the world like, hey, the devil meant for bad for you, but I meant better for your life. And I'm going to get the glory out of your life. And when you share that with people like, hey, I too was in jail. I too was addicted to drugs. I too was addicted to alcohol. I too was addicted to sex, pornography, this, that, and the third. When you tell that to people, and you be like, you know what? I was this, but God had better for me. And then, like God, just like he did it for me, he could definitely do it for you. And when you use that when you use that to connect with people and just love on people, it kind of gives you when you come from that, it kind of gives you an understanding of other people. So it's very much harder to judge on other people, because you're like, wait a minute, I was messed up just like that cat too. I got a bunch of tattoos on me too. Who am I to judge him? I don't know what he's been through. I don't know what she's been through. She probably was considering suicide before coming to church or something. I don't know what they're going through. Who am I to judge that person by how they're looking? Or just because they might not dress like me, or they might not act, like me, or look like me. I don't know what God's brought them through. I need to be somebody that continues to love on them out of whatever they're dealing with.
Exactly. You know what? So your new venture of reviewing books, how did that come about?
Yes. How did that come about? Well, something that I just started my publishing company back in April, and something that I'm very big on is not, I love spreading God's love, but I know that I can't do it by myself. And I know I need to be interconnected with other people, especially other people that's trying to do the similar things with their gifts, with their crafts. And so I wanted to make sure I will be able to be supportive of other artists, other writers, other whatever, especially people in the creative field. Whatever it is that you're doing, I want to be supportive of it, because God gave you that gift to use it for him. And so the book review, I was thinking of ways for a while, like, how can I be able to build my brand, build the awareness of my brand, and at the same time be able to actually help other people along the way. And that was one way I felt. I felt with the book reviews, I've seen a lot of people do reviews on YouTube, Come to find out, some of them even get paid for it, which is crazy. And these are people reviewing like toys, video games, and things like that. But I was thinking, like, what if I invested reviews on actual people that are actually trying to do some good and actually trying to, not saying that the video gamers and all that stuff aren't doing good, but there's a lot of people that have a lot of great things to bring to the table with their writing or with their arts or with their music. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start doing book reviews on people. I've been reading some great books, and it's really encouraged me to get back to reading more often. And I've been learning so much from the other authors I've been meeting and been able to read their books. And so I'm like, let me start doing reviews on them. Maybe that'll help build their awareness. Maybe it'll help build their following, and at the same time help build my brand as well. And then it gives me some good practice to learn all this technological stuff like editing and things like that. Things that I have no idea on how to do. I have no training on. But, I figured like, hey, maybe I'll meet some more people along the way. Maybe this will attract more people. Maybe this will open up other people's eyes. Like, hey, there are actual other people out here, other writers out here that are writing about really encouraging things. Oh, let me check out their book. Let me check out their book, their music, their album, things like that. Yeah. And so that's pretty much how that, came into fruition. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, you reviewed my book, and I thought it was really good. So we haven't done a review of Why Are Church Folk Poor on this show yet. So we just like in a couple minutes, just give them a summary of my book, Why Are Church Folk Poor, based on your review.
So from what I've seen is basically it's going into the financial aspect. Like, why is it that people that follow God and they attend church regularly, why are we the ones that struggle the most financially? And I love the fact how you go into the mindset, like how our perceptions of money and how we tend to misconceive like some of the scriptures that deal with finances. And I love the fact how you also point out how there are a lot of people that aren't even Christians that apply some of those principles, and they're wealthy people. And so why can't, you were like, why can't we grasp those same concepts? And we're following, we're trying our best to do God's work. So, yeah.
Yeah, you got it in a nutshell. It's like, I love it when, people get what I was trying to say, because, a lot of people didn't like the title, Why Are Church Folk Poor? But it's something that a lot of people have asked themselves growing up in church, and you didn't have no money. The only person that had the good car was the pastor.
Right, right.
So I'm not the only person that ever posed that question. But I think I didn't, my intent was not to shame the church or church people, because that's me, church people, I'm church people. But it was just to kind of get us to really start exercising our faith, like really walking out the faith that we talk about in church, So thank you so much for actually doing that for me, because that made me feel special. That made me feel special that you would pick my book to start or kick off your review.
And I'm gonna do more of your books. I haven't gotten your other books yet, but I do plan on doing. But that's something I saw when I saw your book, and I mentioned it in that review. I was like, man, some of that stuff is things I saw in the church as I was growing up, because I grew up in the church, and there's a lot of things a lot of these negative things I actually saw firsthand, and that was one of them. And so I would see a lot of people like, worshiping and things like that, or their heart might not be in it, but they're either acting, come Monday or Tuesday, they're acting a whole different way, or they're thinking a whole different way, or they're spending a whole different way, and it's like, yeah, so that grasps me, because I'm like, we need more people actually, teaching about that stuff and exposing that kind of truth, not to knock the church or anything, like, but this is how we get better, is bringing out what our issues are and loving each other and praying for each other. So, yeah.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree. So real quick, I wanted to be, because we probably got about 5 minutes, but you have a poem in here called Blessed. And since my show is called Blessed, of course, I was like, it's like a really good one. Do you have it with you?
I do have it with me, yes.
So can you read it for us? Because I guess in your words, I think it would sound better.
Okay, give me just a second. I'm just going to pull it up. And give me just a minute or two to cue this thing up.
I guess I should have told you that before, but you should have known
it's
that I
all
was
good.
like that one, because it's in your.
It's all good.
And then I was like, hey, Blessed, that's the one. It's a good one.
This is actually a poem that I wrote back in high school. So I used to write a lot in high school, but the things I wrote about in high school are a lot different from the type of poems you will see in that book. And so that, when I was going through some of the old poems I went through, I used to write, that was about the only one I figured you know what, that's something I would actually publish. You know, I'm not saying I won't bring out the old poems, but, you know, I'll be like, hey, you got to realize it's from a real level of immaturity right here.
But no, read it for us, because it's awesome.
Yes. All right. So in here, I just had it. Where did you go, buddy? Where did you go? Where did you go? Where did you go? I just had you. All right. So real quick, here it is. I think back on all the things that I've been through, the problems I've run into, the things I used to do. I figured that my life is such a mess and that there's so many issues that I need to correct. But then I think back on all the things that's been right, the caring people in my life, the problems I made right. I think back and I realize that there's always been a helping hand, and I realize how blessed I am.
Yes. Because that is basically what this show is all about. It's about people just, you know, realizing that they blessed. Because you can look at, if you can look at some circumstances and you can pick out all the bad, and you're like, oh, woe is me. Or you can look at the same circumstances and pick out the good, and you'd be like, oh, I'm so blessed. And that's that really is the key. It's like you making a decision to be blessed. That's why I love that poem, because that's based, and then you knew that as a teenager. That's awesome. So we are almost out of time. Let the people know how they can find this book of poetry.
Primarily, you can find this book on my website, www.rdtalleybooks.com. It's also available on Amazon. However, my agreement with my publishing company is about to end, about to transfer those rights to my actual company. So that website is actually the best way to get it.
Okay. And for the publishing, like, how do you help people with the publishing?
So we haven't started actually publishing yet. We'll start that in the springtime. So far, I've just been giving people advice on what they want to do, things that they could do with their book, especially if they're still writing, things to get it ready to be published, things that they might want to look out for when it comes to publishing, even if they don't decide to go with me. So. Okay,
so and if they wanted to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
They could contact me by email at roderickTalley@gmail.com, or they can hit me on Instagram at Roderick the Writer, or on Facebook at Center turned Role Model turned Advocate. Those are the three main ways I connect with people.
Well, thank you so much for being on my podcast. You have been awesome. And I know my son enjoys talking with you. He said, because y'all were there the whole time. I was inside the conference, and y'all were there. And he said, y'all had a good time talking and stuff. So thank you for being a role model or advocate now, because you role model turn advocate. So thank you for being an advocate for Christ, and be blessed. And for all those out there listening, remember what God has done for others, He can do the same thing for you. Be blessed until next week. Thank you.
Thank you.